We only really have one job in this planet, and that's to be true to who we are. The reason I'm saying that is because very few people are doing it. We spend so much time trying to get validation from everyone out there. We're ignoring the most important person. That in itself is aging. That in itself has health consequences. And that's not what we're meant to do. We're meant to be true to us. And in that process, some people will like us and some people won't. That's the way it's meant to be. The worst thing that we can ever do is not like ourselves. That is by far the worst outcome. You know what? I found that when we are truly ourselves, the people that we want to like us really do. And they really like us. They don't like an image of us. And that's more fulfilling. They don't like a persona of us. They like us. They like me for who I am.
Feeling confident in your skin is so much more than what you see in the mirror.
And how can you feel good? Well, that starts from within.
Welcome to the In Your Skin podcast. I'm Christie.
And I'm Anna. Join us each week as we sit down with world-leading experts and thought leaders to delve into the latest insights, groundbreaking research, and cutting-edge advancements in wellness, longevity, and beauty.
Sridhar, we go back, 11 years now?
Yeah, it's a long time.
A long time. We've been working together. You've been my mindset coach. You know, you're a mindset and strategy coach for many years, helping thousands of people. For those of you, so I know a lot about your work, but for those of you who don't know what you do, can you share a little bit about who you are and why you're so passionate about what you do?
Sure. Essentially what I do is I help people to break through wherever they feel stuck, in whatever ways they feel stuck, and to achieve or experience what they fully can. So I call it fully blossom into who they are. So whether that be within themselves, whether it be in a relationship that they're in or want, whether it be a business venture. I work with sports teams. I work with all sorts of different people in groups. So individuals and groups to just live the best life that we can. And the major part of that is breaking through those stuck points that we may not even realize we have. We just know that we're not getting fully where we want to. And essentially, I'm dedicated to helping people to do that so that they can expand to their greatest possibility and feel the best they can about this life. And why that's important to me is really because of my own journey. I got off to a rocky start. I had a superstar brother academically, and that's what my family really valued was, what were your grades? And pretty much that was it. If you did well there, everything was great. If you didn't do well there, things weren't potentially so great, as was the case for me. And I started to develop a lack of belief in myself, a lack of belief in my possibilities for life. And by the age of 13, I had a recreational drug that someone gave me to try. And I didn't realize it then, but I now know that it was the first time I just didn't feel pain for such a long period of time. And I went down the road of drug addiction for the next 12 years, and it got quite significant. So towards the end of that, I was homeless and destitute. I basically was left without anything and fending for myself for a good couple of years. And then I had a turnaround moment. So essentially, when I got to be homeless, that's when everything just really dawned on me. And for whatever reason, that was the day that something just changed within me. And I just heard this, I had an epiphany, I guess you could just say. It was just this quiet internal voice that said, you're not meant to be here. I was looking at a tower. It's called the Space Needle in Seattle, Washington. So I grew up in the States. And as I looked at the tower, it just said, Sridhar, you're meant to be up there, not down here. And that was the first mindset shift that I actually had. And that was about 30 odd years ago now. And when I think about what I've been able to experience over that period of time and how my life has changed and what it is now, including to speaking with amazing people like you two, and you can't go through that. I know I can't go through that and not want to share with people what I got to help them have their version of that. And so that's why I'm so dedicated to what I do, because I know what feeling stuck is like. I know what feeling like you have more to offer and do is like. And I've been very, very fortunate. I know that when you really want something, if you don't give up on it, you'll get it. And I wanted answers. I wanted answers of how I could turn my life around and be my best self, not my worst self, or best version, not my worst version. And I, just found some amazing things. In the beginning, it was a bit tricky. I didn't feel like I was finding things that were helping as much as I wanted them to, but I kept going. And then I ended up finding some really life-changing systems, technologies, practices, whatever you want to call it, and started working in my life. And ever since then, I just want to help as many people as I can. And how do we do it? Because we just get this one life. And I know that we all have an internal desire to fulfill it, to do what we're here to do. And there's so many reasons that we don't. So that's why.
Yeah.
That's, I guess, my why.
You said that you sort of hit rock bottom. Do people have to hit rock bottom to then realize that they need that change?
It's a great question. And the answer is absolutely not. No, we can pick the point that we're ready to change. It's just what it took for me to become ready. Other people that I work with, as Christie said, I've worked with so many people over the years and decades now. People just get there when they get there, but it's the readiness. And we can become ready. We don't even need anything adverse to be happening. We could just be positive and go, I know I want something and I'm ready for that. We don't actually have to hit any sort of bottom, but it is a catalyst that when people do hit bottom, that's a time or even along the way, it's a catalyst for people to say, hey, I really want to change, but it really doesn't require that. We can grow from any point. We just have to make that decision that this is the time.
I think that's really important. I think, Sridhar, I've had many rock bottom times and, we've worked through so much stuff, many limiting beliefs. I mean, a lot of the time, I don't think it's a lot of rock bottoms, but definitely some key moments have happened in my life that have changed the trajectory of where I'm going or actually helped put me back on the path of where I am, really wanting to go. And you kind of sometimes do need those moments, but like you said, you don't need to. And I think if you continue to, keep up the daily work of, working on yourself, your beliefs, all of those kind of things, then you don't necessarily have to get to rock bottom. But can you talk us through what are they and how can we change them?
To see that we have limiting beliefs is quite easy. Because if we were to stop and ask this question, if I really went for my life, how far could I be right now? Like if I didn't let anything stop me in whatever area is important. I'm not here to tell people what areas should be important, rather to ask and find out at the heart of a person, what's really important to you. For some people, it's a business and financial or their career. For some people, it's relationships. For some people, it's their physical health, what you two are very much into as well. No pun intended, into wellness.
Into wellness?
Yeah. It's, if we think about how far, if we just really got quiet and thought, how far would I really love to be right now? How far would I love to be in my relationship? How close would I have? What would I like to have in it? How would I love it? I'm a parent. What kind of relationships would I like to have with my child or my children? Where would I love my work to be right now, or my business to be? Where would I love my finances to be? And if we ask this question, the answer that we get is really where we can be. So if we don't have any fear in the way, the answer that's the question. So if you don't have any fear, where would you love to be? And if we're honest with ourselves, we will see that that's most likely quite a bit beyond where we find ourselves at present. And that's how we know, because whatever it is that we can see that we love, that's what we're capable of. I've seen it for so long. We can do that. That's where, I won't say meant to be, that's probably not the right terminology, but that's where we definitely can be. So if we're not there, the question is why? And if we actually took a pen and paper or got a note out on the computer or whatnot, or on our phone, and start answering this question, if I'm really honest, why am I not there? The things that we write down are the limiting beliefs. My partner may not be happy with me doing that. I might fail if I go out. So-and-so is better than me. These are the kind of thoughts that we may not realize we're having, but we always have them. If there's not a person today comparing themselves with someone else, I think they're probably not looking honestly enough, because we do it all the time. We turn on the TV, we'll compare. We open a magazine, we compare. We go on social media, we compare. And those are all limiting beliefs. They're nothing to do with reality. Simply put, and there's a lot of experience behind what I'm going to say, so I'm 100% confident on it. There is no way we can't achieve everything that we want. There's just no way, if it's truly what we want. So limiting beliefs are easily found when we realize, well, what's in the way? Now, I'm not sure how deep you guys want to go on this
Happy to go
question, because we
deep.
could talk about where
We like
Yeah,
deep.
wanna
happy
go
to go
deep?
deep, but can I just stop you? And this could actually be your answer. Are limiting beliefs the same as fear?
The answer is yes or no, sort of. Fear is an emotion. So fear is it's a feeling state, and it's caused by limiting beliefs. So if we're feeling fear, Anna, it means that we're believing something that's a limiting belief. Fear is only ever caused by the mind. So if, for example, you think of, okay, let's say you look out the window and there's a weather event, say a tornado that's coming, it's about 1 kilometer away. Most likely we will have a panic reaction, right? We'll have a fear, we'll feel fearful, we'll start panicking, etc. But if we stop and freeze frame that moment, in that particular moment of time, nothing is actually happening. It's the mind projecting a thought. I'm going to be harmed. I'm going to die. It's going to hit me. It's the thought that then creates the reaction, such as fear. The thought always creates the emotion. So this is something quite big, because we've always learned from the time we're 2 years old or less that our emotions are caused by others or by what's happening, but it's not true. It's never what's happening on the outside. It's what we're believing or projecting about it on the inside that's causing that emotion. So all emotion is caused by thought, and fear is an emotion. So it's caused by limiting belief, would be the answer I have.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I guess, as you mentioned, we used to think other people make us feel a certain way. But in fact, do you believe no one can make you feel anything? It's always up to you to feel a certain way?
I know for certain no one can make you feel anything. It's unless we believe something about it. It's unless we believe something about it. Okay, so say someone says, hey, Sridhar, you're an idiot, or whatever the case might be, right? And whatever the case, whatever they say about any of us. If I don't have any internal messaging around that, we all have it. We all have internal messaging. So the chances are high that we'll have a reaction. But if we don't have anything that resonates with that, then we won't feel a thing. But let's say that we grew up in an atmosphere where, like some of my clients, some of their stories come out of school or at home where someone called them stupid, or someone insinuated that you don't have, you're not smart, or whatever the case might be. So they believe it, and then they start taking on that identity. So then if someone comes and says it, and I'm believing that, I'm going to be charged up. And then I'm going to say, hey, you made me feel angry. You made me feel upset. No, my own perception of myself got triggered when that person said or did what they said, and that's what caused it. That's 100%. I've done the work long enough to know that that's 100%.
Yeah, and
There's no exception.
We've actually been working on this recently, haven't we? Because I had a belief, which I only uncovered maybe a couple of months ago, that I don't matter. And when we actually investigated where that belief came from, it was a childhood experience, that the root, where it all started and where I formed that belief. And then I carried that all the way through to now, 41 years old. And the impact, when I look back at all the moments where I, it triggered me, or I believed that I don't matter, even though I wasn't consciously thinking that. But when someone would maybe ignore me, or, not call me a name, but, not pay me the attention, I would internally or unconsciously think that I don't matter, and that would make me smaller. And so, I've been on this big journey of self-love and just, improving my own self-worth, and just uncovering those beliefs and the power that it has when you find beliefs like that. Remove them from your psyche and detach from them, how much it can impact and have so much, give you so much power within yourself.
It's interesting that you
Yeah.
say that though, because I feel like so many people would be going through something similar. They would have learnt something from a young age. And it's like, is there ways or tools that we can use to protect ourselves from this, or like picking up these sorts of thoughts from a young age?
No, because we're so young when we create them. So I sometimes have parents that come and do the work with where we're disintegrating or disidentifying from those, what did you say? Remove it from the psyche.
For the
Christie.
psyche.
We're doing that. And one of the things I'll say is, hey, how can I stop my children from going there? And I said, you can't, because we can't get into the mind of a child and stop them deciding what they decide. And we can walk around on tenterhooks and say, I'm never going to say anything to them that remotely makes them feel, bad or anything. But then somebody at school will. So it's going to happen. It's a part and parcel of life. And it is part of what we're meant to do. No one escapes it, if that makes sense. So we can't protect ourselves, Anna, from it happening. But what we can do, which is impactful whenever we do it, whether we're 3, 30, or 90, is we can understand that that's what happened. We can wake up to, hey, whether I believe I'm insignificant or unworthy or not good enough or less than or whatever the case might be, we can become aware that that's just a thought process. That's the first step. So we can't protect it from happening, but once we become aware of it, there's a lot we can do with it to make sure it doesn't continue to run our life. Because, as Christy said, and I know from my own story and all the people I've worked with, it has tremendous impacts over the course of a lifetime. And I think the most important thing about it is, Christy, you found out it would never happen in the first place. You never became insignificant other
It was
than
just my
you made up a
thoughts.
story that.
Yeah, it was just my thoughts thinking it.
And is it something that you can actually, once you do acknowledge it, is that the end of the story? Okay, I acknowledge it, I can move on. Or is there more to it?
There's a lot more to it, because it basically, these stories happen in moments of perceived trauma. So I say that quite carefully, because a lot of people would say they happen in moments of trauma, but a lot of the trauma that we've experienced wasn't real trauma, it was perceived. So when I go back to, I know the moment that my story got created when I was 5 years old. And when I go back to that moment, I was actually fine. It was just what I perceived as a 5-year-old was extremely traumatic to my 5-year-old mind. And so you said something about protection. The mind actually tries to protect us. It's actually, in an essence, Anna, it's opposite. It's not that we can protect ourselves from it happening, but the fact that it happens is a protection in itself. Because I went through a painful moment, I didn't want to go through it again. My mind tried to create something where I didn't have to go through that pain again. But what it did was create a story that was imminently painful for the remainder of the time until I started to see it. But it's impactful to the point where when we have these stories, it's kind of like a shock to the mind. There's a physiological system in the brain that records these stories. They're called synaptic connections, and they get recorded in the brain. And this is why 20, 30, 40, or 70 years later, we still have the same story, because it's recorded in the brain. So there's some work to do. The realization of it is the starting point. And I'm really glad that you brought this up, because when I was coming through, which I'm always learning, but I spent a considerable good 2 decades of my life just learning everything I could about being, fully blossoming and connecting and being happy in life. And, when I did that, there were some things that seemed to say, yeah, finding it is all you need to do. Like, there's so many technologies, like, find your story. Like, that's just the start. Once you find it, we need to rewire. We need to, that's a term I don't like to use because it's misused often, but we need to undo. We need to disidentify from that story. And there's work to be done, because how many times has that thought process, fired in our brain? So the brain works through electrical impulses, and those electrical impulses connect with each other, and the information travels. So when we have that traumatic moment, it's like a short circuit moment where our brain records a whole story about who we are. And then we start gathering proof. So if we believe we're insignificant, Christy, if we can use your story, then we'll find proof of that. Someone will say, I think you even mentioned that, someone at school, our best friend, will go and play with someone else. When we're 6 years old, they'll say, oh, see, I'm insignificant. And we just continue to get proof. We go home and our parents say, I'm sorry, I'm too busy, just go and play. See, I'm insignificant. And every time it goes off, we're strengthening that story. And then the brain even secretes chemical compounds to lock that in. So, but it's undoable. It's plasticity, which means it can be undone. It just takes work. If we believe the thought so many tens of thousands of times, thankfully, it doesn't take that many times of investigating or doing processes on it to undo, but we do need to take responsibility. The story will likely come back. So I say I'll work on a story. I've discovered a belief. I work on that belief. It will lessen, but it may not disappear. But the more that when it comes up the next time, I'll do it again. When it comes up the next time, I'll do it again. And I've been doing this a long time to say some stories that I've had in the past, they're just gone. I just don't have them. And other stories seem to be more deeply embedded and they're taking a bit longer. But what I can say for sure is that once you start doing work, you start shifting them at the right level or at the right space. It's not consciously shifting them, because if they're unconscious beliefs, we have to go in there and meet them where they arose, and we have to do something with them there. But if we can do that, they will definitely lessen. And if I think about my life and my story, say 30 years ago when I was on the street, so a little over 30 years ago, and I think of now, I'm unrecognizable from that person. And so long-winded answer, but it's an important question that you've asked, because I think a lot of people give up. They understand their story and then they just give up because, yes, it's work, but how much work was it to embed that story over 10, 20, 30, 40 years?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think once you build that awareness with what the story is and what that belief is, it's kind of like you'll hear it pop up. And so it's less likely to impact you when it does pop up again.
Yeah, you'll know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Whereas when it's unconscious, we actually think that that's who we are.
Yeah.
That's the thing. When we don't become conscious of it, we actually think that that's who we are. We actually think people don't care about us.
Yeah. And
We actually think we're rejected and things like that.
yeah. And if we kind of relate it back to, say, health and external validation and beauty and things like that, because a lot of our listeners are very much into wellness and beauty and wanting to look and feel their best, but may have some stories or unconscious beliefs around that. Maybe they're looking at social media and go, I don't look like that, or I can't look like her, or she's got this or she's got that. How do you think social media is impacting people these days, or especially women? And how can we build more of our self-worth in order to be our best?
The short answer to the question is it's impacting people massively, because every day we're now conditioned to go on and see someone's story. So, I use social media, people use social media, but what we're seeing isn't the person. We're seeing aspects of the person that we get to edit and choose what we show. And the problem with social media is that people consuming it are thinking that that's the real person. I can unequivocally tell you that that's not true, because I've worked with actors, actresses, models, top sports people at the very highest level, all this, some of the wealthiest people. I've worked with all of those people throughout the years. They're not what you see on social media, because I get the other side. When we're talking, we get really real in the conversations, Chrissy, we get really real, and I'll just see what's really going on. And I'm not suggesting that it doesn't have a place, but the problem is, and look, before social media, it was movies, it was magazines, it was all these types of things. But essentially, and now we'll see where AI takes it. It's like it's all this false concept of what perfection looks like, but no one is actually like that. But what happens is we look at it and we think that they're like that, and internally it reinforces that messaging that I'm not good enough, I'm less than, I'm imperfect, I'm ugly, I'm whatever the case might be. So how do you stop changing that? It's a big question, but I would first start to say, stop comparing yourself. That would be the first. Just stop comparing yourself. Realize, and I don't know, you guys will edit this if you want, but I'm going to just be honest about it and take it where you will.
We love honest.
You love honest? Okay, great. So I won't hold back. We have been brought up And I'd have to say, well, look, I'd say particularly women. I'd say that it probably affects women more than men, but men are there too. In my generation, it was Arnold Schwarzenegger and all these people that you had to look like, and if you didn't have muscles that big. But women, you grow up from the start getting messages, fairy tales, happily ever after, Prince Charming, and the women that you look at that you're supposed to look like, the movie stars that you're supposed to look like. It's all one big fantasy. It's a fantasy, the whole thing. It's a fantasy. We're all human beings at the end of the day. That's what we want to wake up to. We all just have we all look a certain way when we get up in the morning. We all have our things that our partner doesn't really like about us, and for good reason. We all have our moods. We all have our down days. And the more that we're trying to push ourselves to say that we're just the opposite, the more problems that it's causing for everyone. We have literally been brought up on a big fantasy, and it starts from when we're 2, 3 years old, when we're getting fairy tales read to us. And then it goes to the books, and then it goes to our friends, and then it goes to the TV, and then it goes to the magazines, and then it goes to the movies, and then it goes to social media, and then it goes to AI. It just keeps going. And it's reinforcing a fantasy that is taking us away from who and what we really are, which is why one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this and so thankful for this opportunity. In the process, we are losing how amazing we actually are. That's what gets me. We're losing who we really are and how incredible each and every person is on this planet. So the first thing to do is to stop comparing yourself to a fantasy of what you see and start acknowledging who you are. It's a big shift. Again, we have to create some new pathways in the brain to start doing this because we've been conditioned to do it. We watched women watch their mothers do it, and boys watch their fathers do it, and it just goes on and on and on. But that's where you got to stop the cycle. And then it's starting to take a note of what we talked about before. What have I actually amassed in my mind as a result of doing that for as long as I have? What have I started to believe about myself? And you'll know it because you feel it. There'll be times when you just don't feel great. What I do is I stop and say, what's the thought that's causing that? So social media is a great place. It's interesting because a lot of times I'm doing appointments with my clients. They've just seen something on social media and now they feel down, and that's what we actually work on. I saw so-and-so doing so great, and now I feel like I'm not doing great. We'll need to do a session on what are you believing about that? I'm like, well, come back next week and that person's having a difficult time and you're not. It's just life. So excuse the long-winded answers, but I think they're important. We need to stop comparing, and we need to start turning the mirror within to start asking, what's positive about me? What's great about me? And don't stop until you find, nothing. Don't stop there. Don't cheat yourself out of that. Keep asking. And then once we have that, start to focus on those things instead of focusing on what we're not. Again, comparing it to a fantasy, start focusing on what we are and start nurturing that. And that's going to start blossoming that. There's some various bits of work, that you can do. If you find a technique, I use some where you investigate those beliefs. You really look them eye to eye, face to face, go deeply into those moments that you're believing them, look at them in the eye and investigate how true they are. And you start to, or not, and they start to dissipate, or even just a sense of starting to shift the narrative in our own minds. It's all here. It's all there.
Yeah.
So
it shows how powerful the mind really is. And we've had a session. We've met before. We've had a session before.
I remember.
Before going on to SAS. And I had so much self-doubt. I didn't even know who I was up against, and I was comparing myself to everybody. And I think I've done this my whole life, which has held me back so much. I remember even from when I was a young girl, and I would always compare myself and always think I wasn't good enough. So I had to show everybody that I was good enough. So it was the things I did. I remember I was thinking no one's going to think I could do law. So I did it not so much because I wanted to do law. It was more to show others that I could do it and I was capable of that. And going into SAS, I really needed to change my mindset. I had to change it and flip it on its head because I had no confidence going in. I didn't even really want to go in. I blame my husband, and it wasn't completely him, but I felt he thought it would be great for self-growth. And I really needed to change something though. So I did come and speak with you. I did a lot of different other things. I listened to a lot of different audio books when it came to mindset. I listened to Ant Milton, David Goggins as well. And I really felt I needed that. And I was so thankful because when I went in, I actually not only surprised myself, I surprised everybody. I was up against some of the best athletes in Australia, Olympians, people who are at the top of their game. And one thing that I've brought from that is that, again, you can't compare yourself to others because you're completely different. Like everyone looked at me and thought, there's no way she's going to make it past day 2. I made it to day 11 out of 13. And it was one of those moments in my life, and it was probably a moment that's changed me forever. Not completely. I'm not like a completely different person. And I'm not someone who I'm like, okay, I've come out of there with so much self-confidence, I'm never going to have self-doubt again. But I think you have to have those little moments in life, and you kind of keep gradually working on those moments. I don't think there's one moment that's going to completely change you forever. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
That was a long story to get to that point.
That was great. I'm just taking it in. I mean, it was a great story. I mean, I'm taking it in. I appreciate you sharing that. And I remember our conversation around that. It's a matter of degree in my experience. So for me, I had a profound moment at the Seattle Space Needle when I was 23. At my lowest moment, it was an epiphany moment that really changed my life. But since then, I've had a lot of them over time that, this moment where you have this realization and that moment we had, and you taking that on in that program, and I remember you sharing how you felt about it and how what you felt you were up against or, what you were or felt you were up against. That's allowed you to deal with that one, right? To deal with that one to that stage. But there's likely to be another element of it, because at the end of the day, we're comparing ourselves, because I'm going to speak to a little bit, because I a lot of times work with athletes, and this is a super important thing, because when we're focused on what the other person has that's great, we're simultaneously, without maybe realizing it, focused on what's not great about us. So rather than to play on our strengths and to play to who we are, we start, comparing and how can I address it? But the more that we focus on what's not right about us, the more that gets bigger. And I think it sounds to me what you were able to do, and I followed what you did there. You were able to turn that focus from worrying about others to focusing on you and what you could do and doing your best, and you did incredibly well in that circumstance. So that will be a growth time. And then this is the great thing about challenges that you say yes to, whether that be your own internal challenges or what you're offered. If you really go for it and you seek to grow in it, then you will come out at another level. So then that's the next level of that and the next level of that. So the simple answer is, for me, it's a lifetime job to do these things. It's a matter of degree. However, at times there are people that have profound moments of realization or awakening and that type of thing. I wouldn't negate that, but it's also okay if you don't have that. It's completely fine just to keep getting better and better results and just to keep working at it. It's a lifetime pursuit.
This podcast wouldn't be possible without the support of our sponsor, Whoop.
Hey, Anna, what was your sleep score last night?
Well, wouldn't you like to know? No, it was 87%. What did you get?
100%.
Of course.
Whoop has me dialed in.
Okay, tell me a secret.
Well, I've been going to bed really consistently, and I've been taking my Into magnesium supplement, of course. Plus, Whoop tracks my sleep performance, how much sleep I got versus what I actually needed. It even breaks down into 4 stages: awake, light, REM, and deep sleep.
Well, that's what I love about it. Whoop auto detects my sleep and it helps me stay consistent. Plus, the sleep coach gives me a personalized bedtime so I wake up feeling refreshed.
Exactly. Sleep is the foundation to everything: recovery, performance, and even how I feel during the day. Whoop helps me optimize it.
Well, want better sleep? Well, head to whoop.com and get a free month when you sign up. If you want to try it yourself, sign up at joinwhoop.com/inyourskin and get your first month free. It also just showed to me the power of the mind. And funnily enough, I actually worked more on my mindset before going in. They actually, like physically, what I had to do. And I did work on that. I did work on both, but more so mindset for me. So was there a moment where you realized how powerful the mind was, or what was that moment?
Hmm. That's one of those that has been ongoing. The more that I go, the more that I see how powerful the mind is the best answer I can give to that. The first moment was the one that I referred to, because when I think of that one moment of time, I don't know to this day where it came from. But what I know that more than 30 years later is my life is completely unrecognizable. All the things that I thought I wasn't capable of is now my life today, and then some. And when I think about that, that was just one shift that happened. But the more that I go and the more that I see what can be done, and I watch people do what they do when they do break through limitations, when they do get clear about what they really want. That's the other step, by the way, that if people don't feel they have beliefs in the way, it's getting clear about what you want is the thing that can catapult. I've seen what people can create. And it's been an ongoing thing. But the more that I open my mind to it, or see it, the more that I understand we're not remotely clear on how powerful we actually are and what we can do. Not even a fraction, just the tiniest fraction, through all these limitations of just how much we can do, and how powerful of a creator that we all actually are. And that's been
No, you keep going.
no, go. It's all right.
I was just going to say that the mind is just so powerful. And, is there a role that mindset actually has, or like your mind has, in how well you age? Because I'm looking at you, Sridhar. I can't remember. You've told me how old you are before, but you look pretty good. And I remember going, oh my gosh. Do you think, because do all this work on your mind, do you think, if you have the right mindset, it can help, how well you age?
There's just no question about it. Like, 57 in 2 weeks.
Yeah,
is
wow.
my age.
You look good.
There's just no
I'd say like
question.
40s.
It's
I'd say 20s.
Yeah.
But if you guys best friends, if you're in the mood for in the mode for a best friend, I'll volunteer.
So tell us your secrets.
Tell us your secrets.
Look, the mind is a big part of it. It's both. This is what I'm so inspired by, what you two are up to with Into Wellness and providing health products for people, but also this, like, in your skin, like you're focusing on the mind, because really, in the end of the day, it is both. It's very much both. For me, the mind just plays such an important role in this, because it's really demonstratable. Like, if you are around people, if you just listen to them, like I'll go around people that are my age and they'll just say, oh, I'm really getting old. You'll just hear them talk about, oh, life is almost over for me, right? I feel like life is just beginning for me. That's that. And I really feel that. I don't, it's not something I'm trying to make up. So the mind, there is an easy way to demonstrate this, but you really have to do it. There's a great way to demonstrate this through an exercise.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Can we do the exercise? Let's think ourselves young.
You can.
I'm young.
Okay, you really do have to do it, though.
Okay.
You have to. If you really do it, it will show you something incredible about this conversation.
Okay. Let's
do it. We want to do it.
Yeah, I'll give you a caveat. Just remind me at the end, for the few people that they won't get it instantaneously, there's something else they can do. So don't let me get away without saying what.
Okay.
But let's see what. Okay, so hold out your hand like this.
Any hand?
Either hand's fine. Okay. Really do this. Imagine in your hand right now is a lemon.
Do I shut my eyes?
Yeah, shut your eyes.
Okay. You can shut your eyes. It's a lemon. It's cut in half. And it's one of those super, super sour lemons that's full of seeds. You know those ones. So without thinking about it, just put it up to your mouth and start eating it like an apple.
Oh, it's sour.
It's sour.
Okay. So So as best as you can, describe the experience.
It's like like your mouth like salivates.
I'm
Is that a word?
cringing a bit
It's
as well. I'm like, ugh,
Yeah.
it's
Like it
gross.
reminds you of the lemon sourness. It kind of goes into the cheeks, you know?
It feels like you're also eating a real
Yeah.
lemon.
Yeah.
okay. So that's what the exercise demonstrates. So essentially what we just demonstrated was there was a physiological or physical reaction to what? There's nothing there. There's no limit. So what this exercise demonstrates is that our minds do not distinguish between reality and what we're feeding it. So I'll say that again. Our minds do not distinguish, even our bodies. Our mind is what creates that physical reaction, because when a lemon's coming, we need to salivate. It's sour, so we cringe to protect ourselves, to some of the things that you both talked about. Our mind actually sent signals to the body to consume the lemon, to digest the lemon that wasn't even there.
If you had
So
a real lemon and you ate a real lemon, is it the preconceived idea that a lemon is sour that is going to make you cringe when eating that? If you thought, oh, this is going to taste like a chocolate cake and you ate it, would that lemon still be sour?
if you
So
were
confusing.
able to get through life, this is a fascinating question. I love your questions. If you were able to get through life and have never heard anything about a lemon, you have no cognition about what it is, and someone told you that, that's what would happen.
Yeah.
But because we're fed stories from the time we're two, lemons are sour. How long ago did we learn lemons are sour? You need to be careful. You can only have a little bit. It's already done. The first time we hear it, we're forming thoughts and perceptions about it. And the body just goes with that. It's fascinating, if you want to take that, how deeply to take it, how much has been conditioned in the mind. But for our conversation, imagine this. Imagine on a conscious, or more likely deeply unconscious level, we're telling ourselves every day we're not good enough. We're telling ourselves every day that we're getting old. We're telling ourselves every day that so-and-so looks better than we do. The body's going to react. So the answer is absolutely yes. The mind has a direct impact on the body and aging, because the body's reacting to whatever we tell it. This is why it's so important to look after the mind. I would say for me, that's the number one element to it. The number one element to looking younger, feeling younger, and all that. Absolutely got to take stuff, because our bodies need to thrive. We need health things to take. And I'm quite a health conscious person, but I know quite a few health conscious people that aren't mind oriented, they're not looking after their mind, and they're still getting older. They're still aging more quickly. And then I know some that are plenty in my work that are doing the work on the mind. They're staying young as a whole. It's that important. And remember that once we believe something, we're feeding that to our minds, to our bodies every single day, day after day after day after day. So that's why the mind becomes important.
I hear a lot of people when they get to a certain age, they say, oh, I can't do this sort of exercise anymore because I'm at that age, and the people that are at that age don't do that anymore. And I'm
Yes.
with a partner he actually went on SAS as well and won it. He was, I think, 40 at the time. And I think he didn't have as much confidence as I thought he would going into it. He was a really fit guy, but at the same time, like, he again is up against people who are in their 20s, but he was 40 and he was almost at his peak. So I think you've really got to remember that just because you're getting older doesn't mean you can't go out and do these exercises, or you can't go out and do these things. I think I like the way you said, like, you feel right now that you're just beginning your life. Like, you've got so much ahead of you. And I think it's really important for people to remember that.
I think talking about how the mind has impact on aging, I have a friend who continuously says, I'm old, I'm old, I'm old. And I actually look at her, I'm like, well, you're starting to look old because she continually says that. So, I think it's so important that we say nice things to ourselves and, talk to
Absolutely.
ourselves in a way that of how we imagine, ourselves or want ourselves to be.
Yeah, I often say a good practice is to just practice saying this after everything you think, or, if you want to take a period of time, after everything you think or say, just follow it with, and so it will be. Right? I'm getting old, and so it will be. I can still practice what 20-year-olds exercises when I'm 40, and so it will be. We need to change it on a deeper level of mind, but by practicing it and continuing to change the narrative that we tell ourselves, there's no reason you can't. You reminded me, and I'll just share it because the other day or other week, I was on a call with a woman and she wanted to contact, she said, I want to make the most of my career for the next couple of years. And I said, okay, cool. And then when we got into the why, she just said, oh, I can't work more than 2 years more. And she looked healthy, like vibrant. She looked like she was really enjoying herself. And I said, just out of curiosity, why, what's going on in 2 years' time? She goes, oh, well, that's retirement age. I have to retire. And I said, do you want to retire? No, I've got a lot left of me, but people will look at me and do this and that. And I'm like, that you're just believing yourself into an early loss of your life, what makes you, because she was still really inspired by what she did. And so, we did something and worked with that narrative. She just snapped out of it and thought, all these people that say this over the course of a lifetime, it does take something, because how often do we hear it? Oh, by this age, what you said, Anna, by this age, you can't do that. By this age, you need to be starting to do this. But how many times do we hear it? But whoever said that was the case?
Is that society's fault?
I wouldn't say there's a fault to it. I wouldn't call it a fault. I would say it's a lot of what's out there is what's causing it, but sort of. A lot of what's out there is the catalyst, but what's actually causing it is we're believing what we're seeing. So there's two important things to say here for anybody that wants to look younger, feel younger, and live their best life. There's two things. I'd say choose more carefully what you put into your mind. Things like this, right? Like what you two are doing. Choose it carefully what you're doing instead of continually to put yourself in a place that's reinforcing a story that's already so deep. And society is what it is, but nobody's forcing us to look. Nobody's forcing us to go on that, Insta page or that Facebook, whatever the case might be. And nobody's forcing us to believe what we believe. Here's what I would say is, if you go on there, here's what I'd be doing. I'd go on there and look at that person that's on there that's doing great and then go, now let me put that down, get out a piece of paper on my computer, my phone, and write down, how am I doing well? Where am I shining? And that would be the way to utilize that. So I don't think we can blame it. Look, society we have our motives for society. Society, people want to make money and that's what sells and this type of thing. But there's a way to have all of that in society and not buy into it. But we need to understand that from the time that we're like 2 or 3, that's when we start learning to please people. They're called our parents, right? We're out in the backyard doing somersaults and not having a care in the world. And then our parent comes out and says, oh, you're doing so wonderfully. And from that moment forward, we're now looking at them before we do one. And oh, am I still doing well? Am I still, and then we're now looking for praise. So I don't think there's a fault. I think there's a responsibility for each person that wants to look and feel their best to put themselves in the right places or to shift their mind in the right places when they are where they are.
Yeah, and I think society then will change with that. If we all change, then society has to make that change. And then you will see people in their 60s, in the 70s, not wanting to retire. And so I think it really, it does, as you said, it comes down to that individual person. And you've also just spoke about people pleasing. What can we do to stop people pleasing? Because I know I'm that type. I think Christie was saying to me she was that type as well. I know sometimes I'm a people pleaser, but I want to put myself first. How can we do that?
Okay. So the first thing to do, Anna, is to understand that people pleasing isn't who we are. It's an unconscious strategy that we created. So I say unconscious because I'm very clear with people, please don't beat yourself up about it. This is nothing that you did. There's no fault. You didn't even know that we don't know that this happens. Same thing happened to me for my own reasons. There's a reason that we're people pleasing. And the first step is to understand what is that. So I would suggest for people to go back to, when did I start doing that? Like children, if you look at small children, if you have them or seen them, they don't care. They're just like carefree, do what I do, don't care what you think about it. That's how they are. So the question becomes, when do we go from that to, I'm now living my life to get validation or approval or love or something of that nature? The first step is, if you can, It's not absolutely necessary, but if you can, go back to the time that we started doing that. When did I start sacrificing my own truth and myself to please other people? Because we know when we do that. We know when because pleasing other people sometimes is wonderful. I love how other people being happy. But when it goes against me and my truth, that's when it becomes a problem. And the people pleasing strategy, or, whatever you want to call it, I call it a motive. It starts for an underlying reason. So in other words, there's a reason that we're people pleasing. So if we look at it, even if we can't go back in time, we can just see why we're doing it now. Hey, I just noticed I said yes when I meant no to that person. Why did I actually do that? And if we're honest, because I wanted them to like me. Okay, well, let me go back and see, why was that so important to me? In fact, you can ask this question: why is it so important for them to like me that I'm willing not to like myself for it? Because whenever we go against our truth, we don't like ourselves. Deep inside, that's what happens. That's the payoff. But why is that more important to me? And then we'll go, because I want them to like me. And I'll go, okay, well, where did that get created? And then it was usually back in school or with the parent or whatever the case might be. If I go back, it's like I wanted my parents to praise me, not always just, well, it felt like always just my brother. It wasn't really. I made that up too. But I felt they loved him. They wanted him and they didn't want me. It was never true. I just made it up. But he got good grades. So they said, oh, you're doing wonderful. And then I didn't get good grades early on. And they would say, why can't you be like him? But when we say that to a 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8-year-old, what are they hearing? I heard, you don't love me, I'm not good enough, he's better than me, etc. So if I feel that, I now feel a lack that my parents don't love me, but it's not true. But I will start people pleasing them so that they will love me. That's my strategy to get something I want. So people pleasing has a motive to it. And if we can understand what the motive is, that's our starting point. And I will say this, you said you want me to go deep, so I'll do it. We only really have, I think, I've done this a while. We only really have one job in this planet if we're really being truthful, just one. And that's to be true to who we are. And the reason I'm saying that on this call is because very few people are doing it. We spend so much time trying to get validation from everyone out there. We're ignoring the most important person. That in itself is aging. That in itself has health consequences. And that's not what we're meant to do. We're meant to be true to us. And in that process, some people will like us and some people won't. And that's the way it's meant to be. The worst thing that we can ever do is not like ourselves. That is by far the worst outcome. But that's what happens when deep inside, we might get caught up in it. But if we're in those quiet moments, that's when we get quiet, we look, that's when we'll see, I don't like myself very much, because we're not listening to ourselves when we're doing that.
Yeah.
And so, I thought I'd give a little bit more on that one, because the process of it and waking up to who we are is for that. But you know what? I found that when we are truly ourselves, the people that we want to like us really do. They do anyway, and they really like us. They don't like an image of us, and that's more fulfilling. They don't like a persona of us. They like us. They like me for who I am. And if they don't, there's another 7.5, 8 billion people in the world. So there's, that move next, basically, is my policy.
Yeah, I really resonate with the people pleasing story, because I think and Sridhar, we've worked together a long time, so you would have seen over the years some of my motives, I guess, for what's driven me, I guess, into wanting to have business success. And very much in the early days, it was all about proving that I'm good enough or worthy enough of love by having a business that's successful. And that did have detrimental effects on me, because it led to burnout. And I think it's great that you really bring that up, because there'll be a lot of people thinking that are listening that maybe that it's time to start really trying to identify what are their motives about what they're doing in their life. Is it for them, or is it for themselves? Because I know firsthand how important it is to really understand what those motives are. Yes, in a way, striving for success in business, it definitely served me. However, when you experience something like burnout and it has such a detrimental health, impact on your health, because that motive was for somebody else. It wasn't for myself. It wasn't realistic and sustainable for me to keep going like I was. And now today, once I uncovered that and I guess detached from those kind of beliefs and motives, and really living way more authentically and living more on purpose, like how much more empowering that is, how much more energy I have during the day, how much younger I feel. I definitely have lost, years. I mean, I'm saying this myself, of my own looks, from just,
Yeah, you definitely.
like I really
Yeah.
don't feel like my age or what people would perceive as my age, because I feel like I'm living my truth. And I think that's so important for people to hear the advice you've just given.
Uh, and you've just prompted me to take it one step forward. One of the pitfalls of that motive that we were talking about, those motives, they're not fulfillable. That's the other thing. The reason that they burn us out is because we can never get enough of it. So say we don't feel liked, and so I'm going to get more people to like me and more people to like me, and there's never an amount of people that are going to like us to fulfill that. So we're on you mentioned business, and this is quite an important thing because I see it a lot in, particularly nowadays, it's not okay to just start a business and get some success. I've got to be the next great startup, and people are putting heaps of pressure on themselves. When you have these billions of dollars, because I know I've worked with some people that do, it still doesn't do it for them. If it's a motive that got them there, if you think of these successful people, again, I'm just really wanting to bust the fantasy as much as possible. We look at these successful business people and go, wow, they've got everything. But if you actually stopped and looked at it under the surface, if you actually look at what people say about these people, they're not nice, they're tyrannical, nobody wants to be around them, they're not happy people. And adding another zero and another zero. Now, I'm all about financial freedom, and I love that. I'm not suggesting money's not, is a problem. It's the motive that's the issue. We can have money and love it, or we can have money and need it. And that's two. One leads to happiness, or not have money and be happy, or not have money and have a motive. It's irrelevant to the happiness. It's the motive that creates a never-ending cycle of trying to get something we can never have except for just a brief moment. Somebody likes us, we feel, okay, I'm safe until the next time. And it's reinforcing that story. The reason we can never fulfill it, and I love what you just said, Christie, because there's a lot of happiness to be had by letting all of that go and just saying, what do I love to do for the sake of doing it? And let me see where it goes. What do I love to do? Because in the end, it was never true. So if I say I want somebody to like me because I feel I'm unlovable in the first place, well, I'm not. I never was. I just created a story. So no amount of chasing people to love me and validate me. This is why you see, if I use Hollywood as my example, and I just want to look behind the whole thing and see what's going on. If you look at Hollywood, there's the best looking people, the most money, the houses, the fame, the fortune, the adoration, everything a human being could imagine having. I would say that they've got it. But what else have they got? Massive addiction, massive relationship issues, suicide. I mean, it goes on and on. So what does that say? That those things, if not pursued from a genuine place, if they're from a motive, they never satiate. And so we end up as miserable or more miserable than when we started. But if we actually go, this is true to me, because I'm all about success. I love success and the pursuit of it, as long as we don't make it mean anything about ourselves. It's like we're whole as a starting point. Now what do I want to do? And that just leads to a much happier life. And when we go through the vicissitudes, the ups and downs of life, we can navigate it so much more successfully because we know it doesn't mean anything about us. We all have failures. I was just on a call this morning where, this fear of failure with this client was so massive, it was stopping, him from going forward. And it was just like, well, what is it? Failure is just sometimes things work out and sometimes they don't. End of story. I actually said to him, he's a young guy, a young athlete, and I said, hey, do you like money? And he said, yeah, I love money. And I said, how about this? I'll give you $100 for every answer you can write on a page. Get a paper and pen. He goes, okay, I got it. So I'll give you $100 for every answer you can write, but I get to call the people to make sure that what you're saying is true. I asked him to define failure. And he said failure, and this is what the definition I've had for decades now from people, essentially. Failure is pursuing something and not achieving it, right? That's most people's definition. I went for something, I think he went a little farther. He said putting a lot of time and energy into something and not achieving it. I said, great. Because it's destroying his life. He doesn't want to get out of bed. He doesn't want to do anything out of this fear of failing. So he doesn't go for his life. And that's true with, right, probably most of us, all of us have this block of this fear of failure. And you mentioned fear earlier. So I said to him, I'll give you $100 for every person's name over the age of 13, and even under, really, that you can name that's never done that. That's never had something that they really wanted that didn't work out. And he really could see he was working because he wanted the money. And he was
Like, he's not
working it.
making anything here.
And he thought, well, he said, there's nobody I can come up with. I said, so can we reframe what failure is? Because it's destroying your life. The fear of it is destroying your life. I've searched failure because it's ruined a lot of people's lives, in the sense of people have a failure and then don't get up again, or don't keep going, or they don't start in the first place. They limit themselves because of this fear. I don't want to put myself out there because I might fail or get rejected or whatever the case might be. I said, what if failure is, if you can't name one person that's doing it, that's having it, if you can't name one person that hasn't done it, what does it tell you? He said, well, it's just what happens, isn't it? I said, another definition of failure, think about what we put onto it. The actual definition that I can find after 20 years of investigating it, the only definition I can find for failure is half of life. It's half of life. Sometimes things work out and sometimes they don't. That's the way this world works. And if we don't put any meaning on it, there's a great quote from Michael Jordan, the extraordinary basketball player. He said, he was being interviewed about success. And he said, yeah, what people don't see is I've missed 3,000 shots. I've lost 300 games. 26 times I'm trusted to take the winning shot and I failed, right? And he said, I keep failing over and over, and that's why I succeed. So these are just constructs.
Well, it's interesting that you say that about Michael Jordan, because I feel like a lot of people probably could relate to this, but on social media, if I put up a post, I'll get so many beautiful, loving comments, but the only one I take notice of is a negative comment. Why is that?
Yeah. Well, because you said something about pleasing earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It's whatever's underneath the pleasing that needs everyone to like you.
Okay.
So the ones that like you, okay, got them, they're safe. I'm not going to worry about them. This one, what's wrong here? But we don't know. I mean, that person, they might be looking at your stuff. I know you do amazing things, Anna. They might, and you're living an amazing life. They might look at you and go, jealousy might come up, or their own perceptions of what's not going right in their life might come up when they're seeing that. So then they project that potentially. I'm not saying that's 100%, but we don't know what's going on with that person. But if there's a pleasing thing underneath us, whatever that we were talking about earlier, then we need every single person to like us. And that's why our mind goes, what can I do to get them to like me? And then I'll be safe. It's like a safety thing. Then I'll be safe if they like me.
Again, it comes back to you, and it's about 100%. Nobody else. It's always about you. Yeah.
100%, because we're projecting, this is a great point. We are projecting the world in the first place. Like sometimes I do talks and that, and I'll go out on a stage and I know when people are looking at me, say there's 300 people in the room, there's 300 different versions of myself in that of me in that room, none of which have anything to do with me. It's all what people are perceiving. And if we actually look at the world, there is no actual world. There's just a world that I'm perceiving, or a world the way it looks to you, or Christie, or you, Anna, the way it looks to that person at that moment of time. They're viewing the world in a certain way, and everyone is viewing the world differently. So for me, it's 100%, it comes back to me. And that is a good, kind of way to what we've been talking about here, is when we put out from the inside, that empowerment, that self-love, that self-belief, that loving ourselves. By the way, what I say to people when they're looking for people to like them and they have a people please, just like yourself. Get up every morning and write 10 things that you really like about yourself every day until you fall in love with you. And then you don't worry about what other people think and do anymore. It doesn't bother you, because it's another powerful thing here. All this validation and this liking that we're looking for is the degree that we haven't done that for ourselves yet. And the moment that we truly love ourselves, we stop needing anyone else to do it. Interestingly, that's the time we get more people loving us than ever before.
Yeah,
true.
It just happens because we don't need it.
Sridhar, for someone who feels like they've lost touch with their purpose and passion in life, where should they begin?
when we lose touch with our purpose, we haven't really lost touch with it. We've just got confused with what we think other people want for us. And that can happen for such a long time that we confuse it for, I don't know where I want to go, because we've been trying to do that for so long. What I would say for people to do is, A, just take any pressure. Like, I felt so much pressure when past teachers said, you got to find your purpose and you got to I just removed that, right? Like, I look at a flower blossom and I think, is it asking if what's its purpose? It's just doing its purpose. And to some degree, we all are. I would just encourage people to make their purpose. First of all, realize that in some way, shape, or form, whether you know it or not, you're already doing it. You're probably just not doing it consciously. And what I would suggest for people to do is to just look within themselves, get everybody else out of their mind, because at the end of the day, we're going to do what's important to us. That's the bottom line. We can be as conflicted as we want about what we think other people want, but if we stop worrying about that and just get on with it, we'll connect more with who we are. There's not a single person in this world that doesn't know what she wants or what he wants. It doesn't. I've never seen it happen. They've just clouded over it, so they're not connected with it. So this is a connection thing. And what I would say for them to do is to just examine themselves. What do I actually gravitate to? If I don't judge it, this is the big thing. Don't judge it as being wrong. If you gravitate towards being a parent, then your purpose is probably be some great parent. If you gravitate, you're always looking at, how do I grow a business? That's probably your purpose, but you're not making it happen. You naturally are headed towards that. So what I do in this is I just naturally look at myself and say, what's interesting me now? What do I see that I'm doing? I would substitute the word purpose for inspiration, and I'd start asking myself the question, what inspires me? And don't let myself get off the hook by nothing. Just watch yourself. Something is inspiring you, because you'll do it. Even if it's looking on the social media, what are you looking for? This would be the question. What do you actually, because people say it's a distraction. I'm like, no, you're probably looking for something. You're just probably not conscious of it. Why are you looking at that person? What do you want? What do you want them to be teaching you? Learn that, go forward in that. That's what I would suggest. Use what you're already doing. For 20 years, almost 20 years, people said to me, it's something out there. And I was always looking on the outside, but it was never on the outside. It was always in there. And when I started looking, I started finding.
Love that.
Well, this has been such an incredible conversation. I know our listeners are going to love this episode. We're going to just actually end with a question we ask all our guests. It's, what does it mean to feel great in your skin?
Oh, love that. For me, what I hear is just to love who you are without needing to change anything. Most of the time, we're trying to change ourselves, and whether we know it, we're doing it from a place of lack, or we don't believe that we're whole, complete, or good enough. And when I hear that, to feel great in your skin is to feel great to be who you actually are right now. And if you want to change something on top of that, great, go for your life. Life is fun when we pursue different things that we want to do. But for me, it's such a great question to end this with, because it summarizes everything that I'm about. Start from a place, and if you don't really feel it, then start looking until you do, why you're already great, why you already have what you're looking for, why you're such an awesome person right here and now. Feel great about yourself, and then pursue your life from that. That's what feeling great in your skin means to me. And I hope everybody does it, or finds a way, or at least pursues it to the best degree. And before we finish, let me just say what you two are doing. Like I said it once before, this is so inspiring what you're doing. I just wanted to say that I'm so pleased to be here, because to be a part of what you're doing with your health products, but also with this, and with putting the mind into it. It's not often done. So I'm so pleased to be a part of this.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Sridhar. We enjoyed speaking with you today, as always. Where can we find you? Social media, website? We'll share it in the show notes, but yeah, if you could share now, it'd be great.
So you can go through my website. We have I hope I can say, a podcast on there as well. So it's just expand-consulting.com. That's the best way to get out to our blog, to our podcast. You can find me on LinkedIn as well. I do a lot on there. Those are the two, probably the best places. I'm on other channels as well, but that's the two places that you can find. If you want to hear a bit more about people's stories, there's a podcast called How to Be a Real 1%er. Christie, you were on it not long ago.
Yes, I have an episode. You can go search that one.
Which was awesome. So that's the best place. People can go and find more. And then if they have any questions or things, there's plenty of contact details there for them. Fire a question away. And I want everybody to feel great in their skin and live their best life. So contact with any questions you might have.
Amazing.
Thanks, Sridhar.
Thanks, Sridhar.